Book Club, baby. It's the Book Club. Book Club. It's the Book Club. It's the Book Club. Book Club. It's the Book Club. Book Club, baby.
Thanks to Christopher Johnson for making this beautiful intro happen. Welcome, everybody. We are here today to talk about Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Some of you probably know that me and Chris are also watching the show. We are reacting to season 3. You can find it on our YouTube channel right now. You can also go ahead and support us on Patreon. That way you will get ahead on episodes up to episode 11. I believe it's the last one we watched. All right, so I'm glad that you like the intro. Chris worked on it just yesterday, had a spur of creativity. So, this is probably going to stick around. So, like I said, we're going to talk about Handmaid's Tale. I'm going to wait for a little bit for other people to join the chat. We have Joe Max. I'm glad you guys like the remix. Tyler Boyce, Autistic Bod, Loretta Lol, King Asa. All right, King Asa, I think that this is the first time I'm seeing you, so welcome and thanks for joining us. John Haymaker. So Navi is currently, she is in Nevada, and this month she just wasn't able to make it, and she also already did a discussion on Handmaid's Tale, so it just didn't make sense for her to come for just this. I hope that she'll join me in the chat. We'll see what happens. But yeah, she wasn't able to make it, but I have some serious notes over here. So I believe that, we're ready to just go ahead and jump right into it. Zdravím Petra Valentu z České republiky. That was a little bit of code for my brother from the Czech Republic. All right, so let's talk about Handmaid's Tale. I would love to hear your guys' opinion in the chat. Let me know if you liked it, if you enjoyed reading it. What do you think? Do you think the show gives the book justice? Feel free to compare and contrast the two. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that. And as I wait for your comments, blessed be the fruit. May the Lord open, John Haymaker. We're going to go ahead and talk about the story itself. So this book is essentially a transcript of tapes that were found that June recorded, some time ago. We learn at the very end from the historic notes that actually it's been, I forgot, maybe 100 years that this transcript was discovered. And there's a professor who kind of talks about the process of the research of how, who June was, whether she's fictional or not, about Waterford and how they found out his identity and what happened to him. So all that is really, really interesting. And it takes on, it kind of accounts for the fact that handmaids were not allowed to read, or women in general were not allowed to read and write. So, kind of that expression was suppressed amongst many others. But it kind of keeps it faithful to the whole story and the rules. So I found that really neat. It ends it follows story of June, who, kind of lives in house of Commander Waterford. She's their handmaid. Serena Joy is the same character in the book as well as in the show. We have Nick, we have Moira, we have Janine. There is, I believe, one extra Martha that's not in the show, that's in this book. So the Waterfords have two Marthas, and we have Aunt Lydia, of course. And so overall, it kind of goes, the story kind of covers the entire season one. And it ends with the first attempt of June to escape Gilead when Nick helps her and then she ends up in that weird storage facility, but we don't even know that. The book kind of ends with the Mayday when Nick is kind of like, yo, Joe, June, the van is here for you. It's Mayday. And she walks off. And then we never hear or see or know what happens ever again. And it's just up to our imagination. And that's kind of where the show picks up and goes on. So let's see what the comments have to say. Please keep your comments related to the books. I will not be answering any questions about reactions. Not today. Okay, so Until Dawn says, I really enjoyed reading it, but I wish there would be more of an ending. Yes, I agree. It was very open-ended, but at the same time, I feel like the historical notes at the very end really gave it more validity, and it was kind of up to our interpretation. You know, I feel like we all want a happy ending for June, and so it was up to us to create that ending in our heads and use our creative minds. I feel like that was really, really cool. And then I don't know if you guys know that, but there is an updated version. I actually did the audiobook this time, so I did Audible, and they have this updated version with where the historical notes kind of in the book, it ends with, are there any questions? The extended version on Audible goes into the Q&A session, and people ask different questions that are really, really intriguing and interesting. The professor answers. All of that is super interesting. And then there is also an essay attached. It's about 20 minutes long. And that is also very, very, very good. So I would recommend you guys, if you missed that part, it's not that long. It's just going to be the Q&A and then the essay. I would definitely read it or listen to it. It's definitely worth it. All right, let's check the comments now. What did you think of the epilogue, and do you think the show will ever do it for the finale? Toy Soldier. I feel like it would be really interesting to kind of see at the very, very finale, to see that time jump and to just see how modern society talks about Gilead and how they kind of reflect on what happened and see whether we've learned anything at all as a humanity. I feel like that's a very interesting concept, and I would be perfectly okay if that was in the series in the finale. For sure. We can definitely talk about a TV show. We are here to talk about both. So we can, contrast, compare, see. We can definitely see involvement of Margaret Atwood in the show. I actually read that she was even part of the show, which I didn't see in season 1. I think that she was one of the aunts in the Red Center. I completely missed it, and I didn't double check if that was actually true. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I read anyway. Frafa says the end made her or him had hope for June. And I think that's what this absolutely is. I mean, the story itself, the fact that this book exists, or the fact that the transcripts exist, is a symbol of hope, in my opinion, because if you're telling a story, you're telling it to somebody who will one day read or hear it, and so the fact that June went ahead and created this narration means that she herself believes that there is a hope and that there's a future, which is really, really cute. All right. Awesome. I'm glad that there are some people who didn't know about the alternate uh, or the extended version. So please, I strongly recommend it. Until Dawn. Definitely try and look it up. See if you can find it. It's on Audible for sure. So I would definitely, get that and listen to that. It's really, really cool. All right. So the first of I want to talk about the writing as well before we go and dive deep into the characters. So just to see the structure of the book and the way it's written, you kind of have the chapters that have names, but some of them have identical names, and the one name that's always identical is Night. So we can see the first chapter is Night, second chapter is Shopping, third chapter is Night, fourth chapter Waiting Room, Nap, Household, Night, Birthday, Night. So every time the chapters are named after different, kind of like mundane daytime activities, and then you have the night. And so many chapters are named a night. And all of those chapters are, funnily enough, the most innocent parts and the most kind of, almost kiddish parts of the book, which is really interesting because, normally you associate night with the terror and the darkness and unknown violence. Here, it's the true opposite. So the real horror and everything bad that happens to handmaids or anybody else in the society happens during the day. The salvagings, where handmaids are supposed to punish whoever has done a crime by just lynching. There's state-sanctioned lynching, and the handmaids have to perform that. Those that are supposed to bear new life into the world. It's just all kinds of twisted, and all of that, or the vans coming in, all the hangings, all of this violence and gore happens during the day. And then at nights you have, June and Waterford playing Scrabble. And I found that really, really telling about the whole society, where all the normal things have to be kind of kept under the lid, like playing Scrabble. And the real kind of horrifying rituals take place during the day. All right, let me have a second to look at the chat again. Actually, you've never read the historical. No, it's gonna be a hard pass for me. Gary B says that this book is going to be a hard pass for him. I would like to know why. Let me know. I feel like this book is definitely for everyone. One really strong feature, but I mean, if you're into dystopias, obviously, because this is definitely kind of a niche audience to have, but I personally love dystopias, and this is probably the first dystopian book that has women as the main character. And so for me, that was really great to read. I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it to you, but I guess if it's not your cup of tea, I'd like to know why. Gary B, let me know. All right. So now from the writing and the way the book is structured, let's move on to the characters. So we have June, obviously, kind of the same character as she is in the show. She has flaws. She's not perfect. She admits her own weaknesses, such as the fact that, she knows that if she was tortured, she would literally say anything. And she would essentially snitch on everyone. And, that is a weakness. And But the strength, I believe, in the statement is the honesty, because she is aware of her own limitations and she's not trying to pretend to be somebody she's not. And I believe a lot of people may be thinking that, if this came to happen to them, then they would be brave and they would be revolutionaries. And in reality, I believe that most of us would be just like June. And we will actually get to the complacency a little bit later. Let me take a drink. All right. So we have June. She's flawed. She's selfish, but she's introspective, and that, I believe, is her strength, because she understands who she is and she understands her limitations, and she can use that to her advantage. Please let me know if you agree with my assessment of June. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So far, we don't really have much going on in the chat. Let's move on to the next character. We have Commander Waterford, or Fred, thus by June being called Offred. And we'll talk about the language a little bit later. We have his wife, Serena Joy, who actually I feel like is way different in the book than she is in the series. In the series, Serena is very, I mean, she's older for sure, but she still has her, I don't know what to describe it. I believe that she's in like her late 30s, but she has this like kind of, she has her like energy. She's very energetic. And you can't really see that here in the book. In the book, she's kind of this feeble person, really without agenda. And she's just kind of chilling on the porch and with the flowers and, doing her wifely nothing. And she needs Kane to support her while walking, which makes me believe that she is probably older in the book than she is in the show. And that also leads me to question whether Gilead has set any limitations in terms of age for wives to be able to have kids, or to have to have a handmaid in the house for childbearing. I wonder if there are any age limitations, because obviously, the older you get, the harder it is for you to raise a child and be there for them when, as you age, you probably turn more into the child, and your adult then child should be supporting you. So I don't really understand how that works in Gilead, and I'm not sure if they've addressed it. Gilead's only 5 years old, so not sure if they have everything in order just yet. She is strict, she's cruel. Jude describes her as having saggy skin, which might be, again, alluding to her age, but it also might be, unreliable narration from June, because, maybe stemming from jealousy or God knows what. I actually have a little excerpt about Serena on page 46, so let me just get there. Yeah, so it talks about Serena and how she used to be this very powerful, or at least energetic politician. She made all these speeches, and then she says she doesn't make speeches anymore. She has become speechless. She stays in her home, but it doesn't seem to agree with her. How furious she must be now that she's been taken at her word. She's looking at the tulips. Her cane is beside her on the grass. Her profile is towards me. I can see that in the quick sideway look I take at her as I go past. It wouldn't do to stare. It's no longer a flawless cut paper profile. Her face is sinking upon itself. And I think of those towns built on underground rivers where houses and whole streets disappear overnight into sudden quagmires, or coal towns collapsing into the mines beneath them. Something like this must have happened to her once she saw the true shape of things to come. So, June speculates here on whether the fact that Serena Joy's dreams came true with the foundation of Gilead, she also kind of reaps what she sows, and she becomes powerless by implementing the same things that she was preaching. And so June here speculates on whether, that kind of affected her youthful and energetic self that she used to be. All right, let me read the questions here. Do you think if Margaret Atwood had wrote the book during this current administration instead of during the Reagan administration, do you think it would be darker or that the epilogue would have existed? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It's hard to tell what if, but I am 100% sure that Margaret Atwood is not happy with what's happening with the world right now, but I kind of feel like it's not that she doesn't find it unexpected, because just by writing this book, she's just very spot on with her observation. She actually, I know that she was inspired to write this book upon her visit, or I think that she briefly lived in Europe during the Cold War, when the Iron Curtain was down. And so I remember specifically her saying in one of the interviews that she was inspired by the atmosphere in then communist Czechoslovakia, where actually I'm from. I just never got to live through that era. But, it was kind of like this, where people had very limited expression. There was very little things they could do to change. There was a lot of complacency happening. Everybody was kind of like June. The revolutionaries had to live underground. They had to have their own little coded language. There was no freedom of expression, no freedom of movement, just like in Gilead. It's not like you can leave the country freely, anyway. And so that I found really interesting, and that leads me to the conclusion that she'll probably not be happy seeing this. And as a Canadian, I'm sure that she has very strong opinions about this administration. But let's not get too political here. Let me see if there are any more questions. Some people are not very happy with the ending, the open ending, because they like closure. They want some hard answers, which I understand. I usually am the same way. But with this book, I really didn't mind, because it's, the type of speculative fiction where you can draw the conclusion yourself in a way. And I believe that the extended version that I actually got to listen to provided way more answers than if I were to only read this book, the old edition, with just, it ending. Are there any questions? I'd probably not be as satisfied as I am right now. All right. So Toy Soldier says that the epilogue or the final historical notes don't answer what happened to June, but it does give hint to society improvement, which kind of is what I was trying to say. It definitely gives you the idea that things moved for the better. There's no more Gilead, first of all. So the United States is back together, and it's a functioning, new country. Unfortunately, we can see or hear some of the statements feel a little bit dangerous. I feel like there is very much a lack of empathy from the standpoint of the professor and the audience. He makes some crude jokes that, I would definitely not take well if I was in the audience, and he gets cheers and claps for those jokes that he makes. I don't know. Are we a society of, crybabies? We can't take criticism? Or are we actually finding our own stands and, raising our emotional intelligence to be able to realize that statements like these are wrong. What do you think? Loretta Law says, I really wanted to know what happened to her kid. 100%. A lot of the things about our characters are left open and unanswered, and we don't really know whether there is a happy ending for any of them. In the series, we have somewhat of a happy ending for Moira, who gets out, and the book doesn't really give us that information at all. I guess maybe it's a good thing that there is the show and that it keeps going and that Margaret works on it with the team, the showmakers. So then, you know, the book is kind of like a starting point, if you will. The show kind of takes on and expands the story further. So I believe, if you have all these questions, the show definitely helps. And I would say that, to me, I always like to compare the book and the video adaptation and see what's better. In this instance, for Handmaid's Tale, I believe they are the same. They really are both excellent pieces of art to me. I love the book and I love the show. I love that the show kind of takes this material, adapts it perfectly up to the point of June's escape, and then kind of from then on it creates its own story that's coherent, and the cinematography is amazing. The way they portray Gilead, the threats, they don't take any punches. They don't cut corners. They go straight in and they show the real raw reality of Gilead. And the book does the same. Both of them are great. I just don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like the book better than the show, or do you like the show better? I'm assuming that the people who didn't like the ending appreciate the show for kind of extending that beyond what we read in the book. The professor is such a douchebag. Absolutely agree. Toy Soldier says, I don't know when was the last time people in classroom gave a damn about what happened in history. People are apathetic when talking about horrible events like the Second World War, etc. So I think it's spot on how classes would treat something like this, but it is also dangerous because apathy leads to events and history repeating. Definitely true. From what I understood, though, this was not really a class of... It was in university and he was a professor, but I feel like it was a symposium, which means that there were other academics talking to each other. I definitely would expect more empathy and involvement from them. And a kind of like, a general historical awareness. And the fact that that was lacking was terrifying to me. If it was only students, who didn't really give a damn, whatever. That's essentially what would happen anyway. But from the professors, I didn't really expect that. So that was a little disappointing. All right. So we have talked about all these different characters. We have Janine, Aunt Lydia, we have Luke. All of those characters that are in the book can be found in the show, and they are very much spot on. As you know, Janine is my favorite character, and I hate every time she gets the short end of the stick. It's just her every time, and she's just such a bubbly and positive person, and she is slowly but surely deteriorating, and it's really sad to watch. Let's move on to the main ideas and themes. Please, in the comments, let me know what you guys think about the themes of the book and the show in general. What is it trying to say? I will start by saying what I think, and then I'm going to read your thoughts on this, and hopefully we can come to a conclusion. So the first thing that I really like about this book, one of the themes that it brings is and I mentioned this before, the dystopian experience from woman perspective. I love dystopias. My all-time favorites are Brave New World and 1964. And in both of those, you have male characters as the main protagonists. And the women, first off, in Brave New World, you have kind of a genetically engineered woman who kind of has no agenda, and all she knows, she's kind of designed to only have sexual desires, and she's also very pretty, but there's no substance to her. And Mr. Savage can't kind of brings him to the point of insanity, because there's no depth to the society once you reduce women to a state like that. In this book, women is reduced to her primary reproductive function, which is entirely different. It's like the outside, kind of the looks don't matter. They literally take handmaid's eyes out or fingers chopped, because those are non-essential things. And the looks are considered, like, if you take care, if it's important to you the way you look, that is kind of a sinful behavior. It's kind of like you're vain, and God doesn't like vanity or whatever. So they will, pluck your eyes out, even though, they have to look at your face as they do the deed. And it's just non-essential. Everything is just about the kind of functionality. So that's very different. Those are two different perspectives to look at the women. But my main point is, this book focuses on the woman experience, whereas all the other dystopian books that I read do not. So I really like that. The next thing we have is the power of language, where we have, the duality, as I mentioned before, the night and day, man and woman. But then we also have the way they use titles and to strip people of their own identity. Because you have the wives, you have Marthas, you have handmaids, you have women who are sent to the colonies to clean nuclear waste. You have babies also, who are, children born with disabilities or just completely deformed, or they call also angel babies who are born without heartbeat or just born dead. So all of these titles, essentially, especially the Marthas, handmaids, wives, and for handmaids to be called off, and the commander's name, like Offred, of Glenn, of Matthews. Those are all designed to just essentially strip you of your identity and just to be the function that you are. Martha, you're in the kitchen. Aunt Lydia, you're, whipping handmaids in shape, and handmaids, you're just ovaries with legs and a mouth. So, that's very oppressive way to look at language. And then you also have terms like ritual, ceremony, and you have salvaging, which, it's essentially lynching. They call it salvaging, which kind of gives it a religious undertone. And that every time I hear something like that and language used in this way, I think of George Orwell's Newspeak, where he, in his books, especially in 1984, he uses Newspeak to just, change reality, where you have 4 and 4 2 and 2 equals 5, and that like an entire, like, facts, logic, everything we know, reality is just thrown out of the window because you can change anything with language. So to suppress language this way is a very powerful totalitarian tactic. And that's something that also happened in my country during communism. We had all sorts of different words changing meanings, and it definitely, is very accurate. All right. So let's talk about the other idea that I think is very important to discuss when we read this book, the idea of complacency in this society. And we follow June, who essentially is kind of like a quintessential example of a complacent person and how that can affect reality. Because you kind of, if you're complacent with something that you don't agree with, you kind of become part of it, and you almost become a part of it to the extent that you support it with your actions. It's like when you don't condone it and just try to survive, you make the wheels rolling, And so the book is about kind of the lack of most people's bravery, and kind of the survival instinct being more powerful than any, I guess, values that we hold dear, which, it's terrifying to read about because it makes you question your own humanity. It makes you question how strong of a person you would be in this situation, because you can say that, I would fight, I would be a revolutionary, I would be this and that, but unless you've been in that situation, you don't know that. And we have crises happening all over the world right now. In this country right now, we have a huge crisis going on, and most of us don't care. Including all of us, me sitting here and all of you guys with the chat with me. We could be doing something better with our time, and, we could be helping at the border. We could be trying to make change and be vocal about that, but we're not. And it makes us complacent in a way. It's sad, but it's true. Okay. And also, to the complacency, I'm just going to read this. Actually, do I have the page number here? Well, I don't have the page number, but it was the quote from Aunt Lydia that is also in the show. And she talks about something not being ordinary now. So she kind of explains that the fact that we find the salvaging, the hangings, and all of those horrifying things not ordinary is because not enough time has passed. And with them kind of participating on these rituals over time, it will become ordinary and it will become normal, and people will get used to it. So they were kind of the generation that could really change things if they spoke up. I mean, it would probably cost them their life, but it would be the most powerful thing they could do. And they didn't do it. And so there you have the ordinary coming with the complacency. The not ordinary, through complacency, turning into normal. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, name I cannot read. It's in Russian. Welcome to the stream. This person says, it's so sad when they mention handmaids that manage to escape but never manage to live normal lives again. That is really sad. And it speaks, again, the true reality of, if you go through trauma, and if you have to relocate to a different city, or, the worst thing that can happen is just if you have to leave home and relocate to a new country where you don't know anything and anybody, and it saves your life, but at the same time, it's like, this is not your life, because that's not the life that you wanted to live, but you just kind of wait it out until you die. It's really, really sad. But the show and the book both talk about that as well. All right, so then we have Margaret Atwood kind of talks about women's bodies being used as political instruments. Obviously, it's the most glaring topic or theme that this book has. And then again, as I said, I believe the book itself to be a symbol of hope because, June wrote this book for somebody to see or hear, read in the future. And I actually have that part here. Here it is. I must be telling this to someone. You don't tell a story only to yourself. There's always someone else. Even when there's no one. A story is like a letter.